All right, so today we are really diving deep into Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. This book, man, it sparks so many conversations about like money and how we think about it?
Yeah, it really does make you question some of those traditional ideas about wealth, doesn't it? And I think that's a big part of why it's connected with so many people.
It's true. Going back through everything, your notes, that PDF of the book, even articles about Kiyosaki and the people who disagree with him, I was struck by how he uses that two dads story. Right away, it pulls you in.
Oh, absolutely, the heart of it all. You've got Kiyosaki's own dad, went to college, worked for the government, but always struggling financially. And then there's his friend's father, the rich dad. This guy, high school dropout, builds this whole business empire.
That difference right there, that's what got me hooked.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder, what did that rich dad get that we're all missing? And
Yeah.
one of the first things he talks about is this idea of working to learn, not just for a paycheck.
Right. It's a totally different way of thinking about work, isn't it? It's not just about trading your time for money, but about getting the knowledge and the skills that could lead to, well, more financial freedom down the road. Kiyosaki even uses this funny example about hating to fix toilets, like calls it disgusting, haha. But he knew that as a landlord, he should be spending his time finding someone else to do it. Frees him up to focus on the bigger picture.
It's about delegation, yeah.
Mhm.
Building a system that works, even if it means you got to think differently about what getting your hands dirty means.
Exactly. And honestly, that principle applies everywhere. Managing a business, your own money, it all comes down to that.
And speaking of principles, we got to talk about one of Kiyosaki's most um, debated points. The idea that your house, the place you live, it's not actually an asset.
Ah, yes, the big house equals asset myth. It's funny because Kiyosaki's not saying a house can never be an asset. It's that for a lot of folks, it's more like a liability, something that costs them money disguised as an asset. And remember, his whole definition of an asset is something that puts money in your pocket. A liability, that's what takes it out.
And he makes that really clear with those cash flow diagrams, right? Showing how the mortgage, property taxes, repairs, it all adds up. Without being careful, your house can become a money pit.
Absolutely. It all comes down to knowing the difference between what we call something and how it really works in like your overall financial picture.
So how do we apply that to, real life? If I buy a house, am I just setting myself up for financial disaster?
Not at all, but you got to be intentional about it. Think about cash flow. Can you rent out a room? Can you structure the mortgage in a way that benefits you? Are you really truly factoring in all the costs? Like we've been saying, knowledge is power.
And this is what I find so interesting about Kiyosaki. He's all about the power of I don't wants,
Yeah.
his motivation. He even says what you don't want can make you far richer than what you do want.
It's fascinating how he ties that back to his own life. He hated the idea of being stuck in a job, that feeling of, I don't want this. It's what fueled his drive to achieve financial freedom. He was constantly asking himself, how can I make it so I never have to work again?
And it's not just about getting out of a job, is it? It's about using that I don't want feeling to push ourselves further, get out of our comfort zone, go after something more.
You got it. Figure out what makes you cringe, then flip the script. Don't just say, ugh, no way. Ask yourself, what would it take to never have to deal with this again?
It reminds me of that story Kiyosaki tells about collecting baseball cards as a kid, memorizing all the stats,
Well,
idolizing the players.
Oh, totally, like any kid. But then he took it a step further, didn't he? That same admiration, he started applying it to these financial giants, people like Warren Buffett, studying their every move, every decision.
Yeah, it's like he's saying, find your own financial heroes, the people who have achieved what you're aiming for. And I think that's a really powerful message because it makes success feel possible. If they can do it, why not us? It's about finding those role models that inspire us to up our own game.
Here's a thought experiment from the book. It really makes you think. Imagine giving 100 people $10,000 each. What happens?
That's a great question. Does everyone suddenly become a millionaire? Unfortunately not. Kiyosaki says that most people would probably just spend it, some would save it, and just a handful would actually invest it wisely.
It shows you how differently people think about money, doesn't it?
Totally.
Yeah.
It goes back to that core message of the book. It's not just about how much money you make, it's about how you think about money. Your mindset plays a huge role.
So how do we develop that investor mindset that Kiyosaki's always talking about?
Well, according to him, it starts with understanding that there are different types of income. Earned income, passive income, and portfolio income.
Could you break those down a bit? I think a lot of people might not be familiar with the differences.
Absolutely. So earned income, that's the most common one. It's the money you get from your job, your salary. Passive income, though, that's where things get interesting. It's about making money from things you own, things that are making money for you, like rental properties are a good example. And then finally, there's portfolio income. This includes things like stock dividends, capital gains. Your money is working for you instead of you trading your time for money.
And that ties in perfectly with Kiyosaki's rich dad philosophy, doesn't it? Building those passive income streams, getting your money to work for you.
Exactly. He often uses Bill Gates as an example. Most of his wealth comes from investments, not a salary.
It all comes back to that idea, huh? Having your money work for you instead of the other way around.
You got it. Building systems that generate wealth, even when you're not on the clock.
Sounds like a dream. But let's be real, most of us aren't going to be the next Bill Gates, right?
True. But you don't have to be some kind of financial genius to start building wealth. The key, according to Kiyosaki, is financial literacy.
He's a huge advocate for that, isn't he? He even says it's more important than a formal education.
Yeah, he tells this great story about how he learned more from just hanging out with his rich dad in business meetings than he ever did in school.
It's about really understanding how money works,
Hmm.
right? Being able to read those financial statements, know how to evaluate investments, make smart decisions about your money.
Exactly. And it's something anyone can learn no matter what their background is. There are tons of resources out there, books, courses, even podcasts like this one. The important thing is to just start, take that first step.
That brings us to the final chapter of the book. This is where Kiyosaki gets into something deeper than just like dollars and cents. He starts talking about finding your life's path.
It's a great reminder that financial freedom isn't about getting rich just for the sake of being rich. It's about having the resources and the freedom to do what you're passionate about, to live life on your own terms.
It really hits home when he says money is a tool. It's not like happiness comes from a stack of bills, but it gives you the freedom to go after what matters.
Exactly. It's about making sure your money goals and your values, your purpose, they're all pointing in the same direction. It's not about greed. It's about having control.
And speaking of control, Kiyosaki's a big believer in taking action, right? He doesn't want us to just read about this stuff. He wants us to use it.
He gives you so much practical advice. It's incredible. Track your spending, figure out those I don't wants that'll really motivate you, find people you admire who are killing it financially, even just learn one new financial skill.
Yeah, like he's saying, don't just watch your money life happen. Get in there and make choices.
Right. He even challenges you to get creative, invent money, he calls it. Basically, find ways to make money that other people haven't thought of yet.
Inventing money. I love that.
Yeah.
Sounds kind of crazy, but it's really about being resourceful when you think about it.
Totally. Looking beyond the obvious, thinking differently, challenging the usual way of doing things. That's how you find those less obvious ways to build wealth.
So for our listeners out there, what's the one big takeaway you hope they get from Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
Honestly, no matter where you are right now, financially speaking, you can make things better. It all starts in your head, your mindset. Challenge those thoughts that hold you back, the I can't afford it's, and start thinking like an investor.
Kiyosaki's big on mindset, that's for sure. Seems like he really believes what we believe about money can either trap us or set us free.
Without a doubt. Financial literacy, that's the key, he says. You got to understand how money works, how to make it work for you, and break out of that paycheck to paycheck grind.
He's got that great example talking about how he learned about money. Says some of the best lessons came from just tagging along with his rich dad to meetings, not from sitting in a classroom.
Right. It shows how important it is to find mentors, people who are already where you want to be. Surround yourself with that energy.
Be proactive. Seek out knowledge. Don't be afraid to ask questions.
Exactly. Like that saying, the only stupid question is the one you don't ask. Kiyosaki wants us to be curious, keep learning, always be on the lookout for new opportunities.
And sometimes those opportunities are right in front of us, right?
Yeah.
We just need to shift our perspective, see the potential that other people miss.
100%. One of the most valuable things I got from Rich Dad, Poor Dad is how important it is to have an entrepreneurial mindset. And you don't have to be like a business owner to do that.
What does that look like, though, having an entrepreneurial mindset in everyday life?
It's about being the person who solves problems, who comes up with new ideas. You see a roadblock, you see a chance to make things better. You're willing to take risks, but smart ones, and you're not afraid to get uncomfortable.
It's about making your own destiny, not just letting life happen to you.
You got it. And it doesn't have to mean you quit your job tomorrow and start a company. It's about using those same principles, that same thinking in everything you do.
So how can people listening start to develop this mindset you're talking about? Where do they even begin?
I think it starts with a little mental shift. Instead of thinking, I work for this company, it's I work for myself even if I'm getting a paycheck from someone else right now. That one little change, it can make you feel more in control, more willing to take on challenges, always looking for ways to add value.
It's like having a growth mindset, right?
hmm
Always looking to learn and get better.
Absolutely. Every challenge is a chance to learn something new, something that'll help you grow.
So as we keep going deeper into Rich Dad, Poor Dad, what other golden nuggets can we share with our listeners?
Well, one of the big things Kiyosaki talks about is the difference between assets and liabilities and how those two things work together in our financial lives.
Right. He says an asset is anything that puts money in your pocket
Mm.
and a liability takes it out. Sounds simple enough, but then he throws a curveball, says even a house, it might not always be an asset.
Exactly. He's saying it doesn't matter what we call something, a house, a car, a fancy watch. It's about what it's doing to our overall financial picture. Is it making us money? Is it going up in value? Or is it costing us money, keeping us stuck in a cycle of debt?
He uses those cash flow diagrams to really show what he's talking about, and it's powerful. Seeing those arrows, money coming in, money going out, it makes it real clear how our choices impact things.
Those diagrams, they're brilliant. They take these complicated financial ideas and make them so easy to understand no matter what your background is.
I think that's one of the best things about Kiyosaki as a writer. He takes these topics that could be really intimidating, really dry, and he makes them interesting. He makes you connect with them, even laugh sometimes.
You're so right. He's not afraid to tell stories, personal stuff, even crack a joke or two. It makes his points stick with you.
Which brings us to one of my favorite parts of the book, Kiyosaki, talking about collecting baseball cards when he was a kid.
Oh, yeah, he was obsessed. He'd spend hours with those cards, memorizing every stat, idolizing those players like any kid who loves their sport, you know?
But then he takes it a step further, right? He starts applying that same passion, that same study to these financial titans, guys like Warren Buffett.
So smart. He figured if he could put that much time and energy into understanding baseball, he could do the same for finance.
And he makes this connection. It's so important. He's basically saying, just like we have our sports heroes, we can have our financial heroes too. We can learn from their strategies, their mindsets.
It's about finding people who inspire you to step up your game.
And sometimes those people aren't who we expect.
Right. Kiyosaki's rich dad, he wasn't some big shot Wall Street guy or the CEO of a huge company. Exactly. He was an entrepreneur, someone who built his own success through hard work, making smart choices, and never being afraid to challenge the way things were done.
And that's a really powerful message, isn't it? It means that anyone, no matter where they come from, no matter what their situation is right now, they can achieve financial success.
It all comes down to having the right mindset, becoming financially literate, and taking action. You got to do the work.
And speaking of action, Kiyosaki is all about taking that first step, even if it seems small.
He believes in momentum, you know? It's like those small actions done consistently over time, they add up to big results.
He even asks us to imagine what would happen if you gave 100 people $10,000 each.
Such a thought-provoking question, right? He uses it to show how differently people think about money.
Most would spend it, some would save it, and only a handful would really make it work for them, invest it wisely. It shows us that our success with money isn't just about how much we make, but how we think about it, how we manage it.
And that, my friend, brings us back to the importance of financial literacy. It's about understanding there are different ways to make money, not just from a job. There's earned income, passive income, portfolio income, and how we can use all of them to build real, lasting wealth.
It's easy to get stuck in that mindset, right?
Mhm.
Work, get paid, spend it. But Kiyosaki wants us to break free from that. Look for different ways to build wealth.
He's all about creating systems that bring in money even when you're not working. Like, think about rental properties. That's a way to maybe create some passive income, which you could then reinvest or use to chase other opportunities.
That reminds me of that idea he talks about, inventing money. It sounds a little out there at first, but it's really about being creative, spotting those chances that other people miss.
Exactly. It's about thinking differently, challenging the usual ways of doing things. Kiyosaki really believes that the most successful investors are the ones who can see what other people don't, the hidden potential.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Rich Dad, Poor Dad, what's one thing our listeners can do, like today, to start using these ideas in their own lives?
I'd say take a few minutes and think about your own I don't wants. What are those things in your life you'd love to change? What are those money worries that keep you up at night? Write them down.
Because those I don't wants, they can really light a fire under you, can't they? Push you to make a change, find solutions.
For sure. Once you know what those pain points are, start brainstorming. Don't hold back. Just get any and all ideas out there, even if they seem kind of crazy at first. Remember, Kiyosaki wants us to think like entrepreneurs, even if we don't see ourselves starting a business.
That's a really important point. You don't have to quit your job and become a full-time investor to get something out of what Kiyosaki's teaching. These principles, they can apply to anyone no matter how much money you have.
Exactly. Start small. Maybe it's finally reading that investing book, taking a class about money, or even just chatting with a financial advisor. The important thing is to take that first step and then keep going.
And remember, financial freedom, it's not like you reach it and you're done. It's about making smart choices, ones that line up with what you care about, what your goals are, and it's about being brave enough to question what you think you know about money.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And like Kiyosaki says, even a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. So what will your first step be?